Hey, welcome to Cinephile Studios' review of Ready Player One, featuring, whoa, Indiana Jones, whoa, Star Wars, Back to the Future, Aaron Brockovich, Tyler Perry, every single role that Leonardo DiCaprio's ever played. Oh my god, it's Doritos. Oh my god, it's Denoid. Oh my god, it's the lion from The Wizard of Oz, Nosferatu. Oh my god, it's everywhere. I feel that the whole country has been duped into a film known as Ready Player One, in that every single thing that I heard about the movie before it came out seemed to be sort of off. I heard complaints about the movie from people who had read the book, and I heard a lot of the complaints about the book, which a lot of those character moments that people talked about in the book didn't show up in the movie, though. The same thing can go for the way the story is presented in the book, because there's a lot of narration, there's a lot of the character just naming off trivia that he knows, which to me seems less like a book and more like, I don't know, Tumblr, just going on Tumblr and reposting things. I could see why, yeah, as a narration that would probably be sort of annoying, and I do kind of hate characters who use pop culture as a sort of currency. I don't know if people who read the book and liked it will be pleased. I don't know if people who hated the book will be pleased. I have no idea. To me, it was just an entertaining movie. It was a spectacle. It was a really good looking film. I haven't seen a Steven Spielberg, well, he hasn't really done a big action flick, a big action special effects movie in quite a while. He did Tintin, which was more of an adventure flick, and it had a lot of motion capture and such, but I wouldn't really put that under the category of special effects movie. Same with the Big Friendly Giant, BFG, which is a movie I didn't like that much. That had effects, but it wasn't really an effects movie. The last one he really did was War of the Worlds, which, very good looking movie, but I'm thinking more of something like Minority Report, which takes place in a somewhat distant future and is a special effects heavy film, and a movie that I don't think looks very good. Ready Player One looks amazing though. The cinematography is great. That is the best thing to say about this film, is that it seemed to kind of have the most realistic interpretation of the future that I've seen in a movie, as far as what I think would happen, because I think a lot of movies like to make it a little too extreme. However, that's the thing about it. While I think the movie is amazing, I would almost give it, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 maybe. I mean, I really enjoyed every second of this movie. It is a spectacle. You should see it on the big screen. Man, this movie has no message. And it's kind of amazing how, bad it is, because it's not even a bad, there's just no message. This movie really has nothing to say about really anything that the movie's about. There's virtual reality technology, and there's nothing about the implications of that or such. The characters in the movie are very standard, but I wouldn't even call them that. It's just that there's nothing to them. I was kind of making a comparison while watching the movie to The Goonies, something like The Goonies, or a bunch of other 80s flicks that just kind of took stereotypes. And stereotypes I don't think are inherently bad. There's offensive stereotypes, of course, but there's some stereotypes that you can actually build a character around to make that character relatable. It might be a cheap way of writing, but it works. The Goonies did it, and they made it work. Steven Spielberg's never been really good at taking stereotypes. He's really good at just creating a very original character, a real character who, he's just his own person. He does that a lot in his films, like Jaws, Sugarland Express, the kids in E.T., and even the newer films like War of the Worlds or Catch Me If You Can. He does very organic characters, and this film didn't even have that. This movie probably could have benefited from having more stereotypical characters, because the characters become so bland. They're very bare bones and nothing that anyone can relate to. But the rest of the movie is just so filled up with so many things going on that you kind of ignore it. Like, you don't really need a good character to follow this story. And that's the thing. The story is great. It's very similar to Willy Wonka, if you've seen the original 1971 Willy Wonka film. Willy Wonka even doesn't really have much of a message other than, oh, you know, be a good kid. You know, be the best egg among the other bad eggs, I guess, and you'll get everything you want. And it's that the story is so good and entertaining, and it's such a fun, wild ride with different scenarios going on throughout the film that you kind of don't care that the character or the message is very much just not there at all. I really enjoy the story. I think it was very simple, and it worked. I thought it was adventurous. You know, I haven't been able to call a movie a great adventure in a long time. Everybody was complaining about the references, and they were saying that this was just Member Berries the movie, which the references are there, and there's some that are very apparent, and there's some that people will question. It depends how you look at this movie, because at one point you can be like, oh, that's completely changing up the character and what it was originally meant to stand for, and, you know, what it's meant to be. But you could also look at it from the angle of, yeah, but in pop culture we often, you know, we buy things and we get merchandise of characters that we love, that when we wear the t-shirts or we have the little miniature action figures in our house, that doesn't mean that merchandise represents that character really either. A lot of people are going to look into that and be like, this is not what his original film was about. This is tarnishing a work of art, even though, come on, the movie, you could still go get it off your shelf and watch it. It's not tarnishing it, but you could say that's taking the art and it's affecting it. It's turning it into something that it's not, and it's making it represent something that it didn't originally represent, which I guess my only argument is the fact that this movie is really not about anything anyway, so it can't really affect the art because it's not trying to make it stand for anything else. It's just kind of there to be looked at and for our characters to enter, I guess. But in the case of The Shining, people are going to complain about that. They're saying that they're ruining the original work by trying to make it something that it's not. Come on, though, isn't it really cool to see The Shining, the whole house from The Shining, the hotel from The Shining? Isn't it cool to see the Iron Giant? And maybe that's a lot of people's problem with the movie. Maybe it's the fact that, yeah, like, what is the point of the reference? Is it just for people like me to look at it and be like, oh, look at that? You could either really look into it and by all means go for it, or two, you could just enjoy it for what it is. And I don't know, I just enjoy it. I don't know, I thought the references were fine, especially since they weren't in there as much as I thought they would be. They're there. There's references here and there, but it's like, yeah, the references are not as much of a multitude as you would think. It's kind of like how Wreck-It Ralph's promotions or advertising made it seem like there was going to be a lot of video game characters, which in the end that didn't really happen. There was a lot of more originality to it than there was just referencing characters. Same thing with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I mean, maybe those are bad comparisons because I think both of those movies are probably better. Well, I mean, maybe not Wreck-It Ralph. I'd have to give that another watch. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit's like one of my favorite movies. This is not close to that, but it's kind of similar how they use their references because they're there, but it's not like there's a lot of them. And they also are just kind of there to fill the environment and make it seem like a realistic environment, because you can't just have a bunch of different video game characters referencing pop culture that don't actually exist, because then that wouldn't really make sense. You could also just not reference pop culture in general, but come on, if a virtual reality world like this was going to happen, it was going to happen like this. And say what you want about like the writer and everything and how he just listed off references to show his ever-expansive knowledge of pop culture. Sure, that's lame. I think it is kind of lame to do that. But he's not the one who made this movie. It's different collaborators. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for instance, their character designs are not from the original cartoon. They're the modern-day Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And, you know, like the Battletoads, they're not from the Nintendo game. They don't look like they're Nintendo sprites or anything. They're just like 3D animated Battletoads. That happens a lot in this movie. There's a lot of video game like references that I'm not going to get, but then there's going to be other stuff like Mechagodzilla and King Kong, which they don't look like the original characters really. They kind of do, but they just look like 3D recreations. You can't really call it a reference. You can, and you'll be like, oh, I noticed that, but it's not distracting is the thing, because it's still kind of an original version of the characters, I guess. This movie was a great spectacle, and it just was a really, for a 2.5-hour movie, it was really well paced. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was kind of goofy at times. The humor really worked for me most of the time. There was definitely bits and pieces here where you can, you know, the characters just didn't work well, which that's the biggest problem with this movie, is just the characters. The characters and the fact that it doesn't really have to say anything about anything. It doesn't really have a message. But I like movies like that once in a while. So should you see Ready Player One? I mean, you've probably already made your decision about that. To me, I mean, if you're just interested in seeing a fun movie on the big screen, yeah, this is entertaining. But anybody who has serious problems with the film before it came out probably are not going to be swayed too much. I really think that the movie will pretty much go down in history as that weird time that Steven Spielberg decided to do a movie about nostalgia, despite the fact that he is a big icon of nostalgia. He didn't reference his movies a lot, which was probably best, but you know, it was weird for him to do this movie anyway, like, despite the fact that he didn't really reference anything. Oh, I didn't even really mention Holiday at all, but he was probably the most compelling character of the whole movie, even though I still feel like Steven Spielberg didn't do much to actually say anything with him. He just kind of related to him, maybe, or maybe even to Simon Pegg's character, but I don't really know. Maybe there is something more to that. Maybe I can read more into that in the future, but I feel like it was very bare bones, and Steven Spielberg, it's not one of his best, obviously. I'm not going to say that, but it's definitely, it was a lot of fun, and it has that great cinematography. It has a real cool looking virtual reality world, a cool futuristic world, and I don't know. I mean, characters are bullcrap, story's good, and there's no message, so oh well. I don't know. It's just kind of a weird movie to talk about, because this isn't typical Spielberg, I don't think, but I kind of almost want to see it again, because it is a spectacle. So that was me talking about Ready Player One.